Hello, first graders. Happy Monday. Today we are going to move on to something new in math. This week we are going to be learning about length and measurement. So we are going to be learning some new vocabulary words. When you are measuring things, you're going to have to use some different words to describe the length of the objects. You'll notice some of these words will be needed in your learning packet for this week. So when you're working on those math workbook pages, you'll have to use some of those words. I wrote some of them down over here. Some of the words that you'll see that you might need when you're describing something is you might say something is short, or maybe you'll say something is shorter. If you're comparing two objects, you could say one thing is shorter than the other thing. So if I was looking for something to compare here. If I'm comparing this paintbrush with this pencil, I could say that one of them is short, I could say one of them is shorter, and I could say that the pencil is the shortest, okay? And then on the other end, I could say long, so the next words down here are long, longer, and longest. So if I was comparing two objects like this, I could say that the paintbrush is long, the paintbrush is longer, or the paintbrush is the longest. So those might be some words you might see. There's some other words down here, kind of hard to see there. There we go, tall, taller, and tallest. Same thing, if I'm comparing these, I could say that the paintbrush is tall, the paintbrush is taller than the pencil, or the paintbrush is the tallest object. Okay, so those are some vocabulary words that you might be needing to use this week and you might be hearing about. The other thing that we're going to learn about is that sometimes things are measured using something called non-standard measurement. And that just means that you're not using a ruler. Rulers have inches and centimeters. Those are things you'll learn about soon, but not in first grade. In first grade, what we're going to learn about is just measuring things using some kind of objects that you can find at home. So you could use paper clips and just line up your paper clips to measure something. You could use, if we were at school, we would have used paper clips to measure stuff around our classroom. We also would have used the cubes to measure things, and we would have lined up the cubes to see which was going to be the longest object, okay? We could use string to measure things. Think back to our Statue of Liberty when we learned about her, that symbol of America. We used string to show the length of parts of her body. So we measured like what her finger was like, how big her finger was, and we had string. Remember how long that string was? We used that string to measure, okay? So you don't always have to use a ruler to measure things. Sometimes you can use everyday objects like pencils. How many pencils will it take? How many paper clips? How many cubes? Another thing that we would have done if we were at school would have measured with our feet. So we would have kind of stepped with our feet to see how many times it would take for our feet to cross over the line. So there are many different ways we can do measurement. These are some of the words that you'll notice: short, shorter, shortest, long, longer, longest, tall, taller, tallest. Those are words you'll need when you're comparing the length of things, because you might say, this thing is longer than this, or this object is taller than this one, or this object is long, but this object is longer. Okay, so those are just some words you might see. For today, what I want to show you is a Brain Pop video. Since you don't have the login for Brain Pop, I'm going to play it for you here. So I'm going to share my screen, and it's going to be about how they are measuring objects using just everyday objects. So you might see them measure something with paper clips. You might see them measure something with cubes. So let's watch this video together. All right, so different types of measurement. We are going to look today at this one. Non-standard measurement. All righty. Make it nice and big so we can see. There we
go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm measuring where we need to stand for the beanbag toss. I don't have a ruler or tape measure, so I'm measuring in a different way. How can you measure without a ruler? You can use objects around you to measure things. Yep, you can use crayons to measure. Line up crayons along the object you want to measure. Make Make sure the crayons are straight and the same size. There shouldn't be gaps between them and they shouldn't overlap. The end of the crayon should line up with the end of the object. This book is 4 crayons long. If you don't line up the crayons correctly, your measurement won't be accurate or correct. It's important to use the same object when you measure. If you use different objects, you won't get an accurate measurement. Cool robots, Moby.
So far, some of the things that they've talked about, when you're measuring things, you want to make sure that they line up. They have to be touching. There should not be any gaps in between. So if you were measuring with paper clips, your paper clips have to be touching. The other thing that she mentioned, which is important, is they have to be the same size. You can't use 2 different sizes of pencils or 2 different sizes of paper clips. They have to be the same size for your measurement to be accurate. Okay, let's keep watching.
How tall are they? We can use blocks to measure their height. The green robot is 4 blocks tall. How tall is the red robot? Let's see. It's 10 blocks tall.
Why do you think that they have different measurements here? Why is one robot so much taller? The green robot is taller, but they're showing that the green robot is actually less blocks. What's the problem here? What's your guess? Why do you think they're not getting an accurate measurement here? Let's take a look.
You're right, Moby. It seems like the red robot is taller because the number is bigger. But I know the green robot is taller. Since the blocks we use to measure are different sizes, it's hard to compare the measurements. When you compare measurements, always use the same object to measure. The green robot is 4 blocks tall, and the red robot is 3 blocks tall. How does using smaller or larger objects change your measurement? When you measure using objects, think about the size of the object you want to use. Let's measure this paint kit using paper clips.
Again, notice that she's lining them up exactly. There is no gap between each of the paper clips. You have to make sure your paper clips are touching and in a very straight line like she has done here.
See, it's 6 paper clips long. Now let's try measuring with something bigger, like erasers. The paint kit is 3 erasers long. We used more paper clips than erasers to measure the paint kit. When you measure using smaller objects, you use more of them. When you measure with larger objects, you use fewer. What should we use to measure this bookshelf? Pencil sharpeners are pretty small. It'd take a long time to measure this bookshelf. You want to use an electric guitar? The guitar is longer than the bookshelf. It's easier to use something smaller than the object you're measuring. That's better, Moby. The bookshelf is 4 pencils wide.
I'm going to stop for a second and talk about that. So she said that they should not use pencil sharpeners to measure this bookshelf because that was going to take so many. So when you're measuring a really big object, you might want to use a bigger object to measure with. So for example, if we were going to do this activity in our classroom, if we were measuring the tables that you guys sat at, we probably wouldn't want to measure the table with cubes, or we would be measuring for a really long time and we would need quite a bit of cubes. So if we were going to measure how big the tables are, it might make more sense to use a bigger object to measure with, just like they've done here with pencils. Let's keep watching.
A unit is what you use to measure. So the unit we're using to measure is pencils. What are some examples of units? We measure length in units like centimeters or meters. We also measure in units like inches or feet. Standard units are common units that people use so they can describe measurements in the same way. If we didn't measure things in the same way, then we wouldn't understand each other. Building things would be really hard if we didn't use common units. But sometimes you don't have a ruler around, so you can use non-standard units. I need to measure about 10 feet away from the board for the beanbag toss. So I'm walking 10 steps. It looks like we need to stand here for the beanbag toss. You can go first, Moby. Moby, that's not fair.
Alrighty. So that is just a quick video I wanted to watch with you today about using non-standard measurement. So remembering that sometimes when you're measuring with objects, you want to use the same thing. So you wouldn't want to use two different objects. You would want to use the same object. You want to line them up together so that there's no gaps in between. And you want to make sure that you're keeping them in a nice straight line. And we will learn more about lengths this week. And there will be iReady lessons showing up for you. So make sure you get on iReady and do some of those blue lessons. All right, bye first grade.